The blade of the great sword, Severance, was 6 feet of black iron that had tasted the blood of kings and beggars alike, but when it fell from the hands of the warlord, it hit the stone floor with a clang that sounded like a church bell signaling the end of an era. Hey friends, welcome. I'm Marcus. Another incredible gladiator story for you today. This isn't just a story about blood and sand, it's about the cost of a human soul. Let me know where you're watching from and please hit that subscribe button. Let's get started. You have to understand the reputation of General CLANG. In the kingdom of Ethelgard, they didn't call him a soldier, they called him the Extinction Event. For 20 years, he led the Emperor's Iron Vanguard. His orders were simple: leave no stone standing, leave no heart beating. He had burned libraries, razed cities, and silenced rebellions without blinking. Rumor had it that he had cut out his own tear ducts so he could never cry. He was a weapon, cold and efficient, the mission was routine. The village of Willow Creek had refused to pay the war tax. The Emperor's command was absolute: make an example. CLANG rode into the village at sunset. By nightfall, the sky was choked with black smoke. The Iron Vanguard moved through the streets like a scythe. Houses were torched. Villagers who ran were cut down. CLANG walked through the inferno. His armor reflecting the flames, his face a mask of indifference. He stepped over bodies like they were fallen logs. He reached the town square. The last of the villagers had been herded into the small stone chapel. This was the final step. Burn the chapel, seal the doom, ride home. CLANG kicked the heavy oak doors open. The wood splintered. He strode inside, Severance resting on his shoulder. Inside, 50 people huddled together, men, women, the elderly. They screamed when they saw him. They knew the armor. They knew the black helm. Silence, CLANG commanded. His voice was like grinding gravel. The screaming stopped, replaced by the terrifying sound of 50 people holding their breath. CLANG raised his sword. By order of the Emperor, you are declared traitors. The sentence is death. He prepared to give the signal to his archers waiting outside to fire the fire arrows, but then, movement caught his eye. From the back of the huddle, a small figure pushed through the crowd of terrified adults. It was a girl. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old. And she was pristine. While everyone else was covered in soot, mud, and blood, she was wearing a dress of pure, blinding white cotton. She didn't run away from him. She walked toward him. The villagers gasped. A woman reached out to grab her, but missed. Lily, no, she sobbed. The girl stopped 3 feet away from the giant armored warlord. She had to crane her neck all the way back just to look at his helmet. She was holding something in her hands. A small, crushed flower. A daisy. CLANG froze. He stared down at her. He expected fear. He expected begging, but the girl just looked at him with eyes the color of a stormy sea. And then, she did something that stopped time. She reached up and held the flower out to him. You look sad, Mr. Knight, she whispered. Her voice echoed in the silent chapel. CLANG's breath hitched in his throat. It was a physical spasm, painful and sharp. It wasn't just the white dress. It was the eyes. And it was the scar, a tiny, crescent-shaped birthmark on her chin, 20 years ago. Before he was the Extinction Event, CLANG had a family. He had a daughter named Elara. Elara had a white dress she wore for festivals. Elara had eyes like a stormy sea. And Elara had a crescent birthmark on her chin. He had come home one day to find his house burned by bandits, his family gone. That was the day CLANG died and the monster was born. He had spent 2 decades killing the world to punish it for taking her, and now, here she was. A ghost? A reincarnation? A hallucination born of smoke and guilt. The girl's hand trembled slightly, but she didn't lower the flower. My mama says flowers make the hurt go away. CLANG looked at the sword in his hand. The instrument of death. Then he looked at the flower. The symbol of life. His hand opened. Clang, the massive sword hit the stone floor. The sound was deafening in the silence. The Iron Vanguard soldiers standing behind him in the doorway exchanged confused glances. Their general never dropped his weapon. Never, General. His lieutenant, a bloodthirsty man named Varkas, stepped forward. General, give the order. Burn them. Kalen didn't answer. He slowly fell to his knees. The armor crashed against the stone, bringing him to eye level with the child. He reached out a gauntlet hand. He was shaking. The man who had slaughtered armies was trembling before a 6-year-old. He took the flower with 2 fingers. Gentle as a breeze, who are you? Kalen rasped, his voice breaking. I'm Lily, she said, smiling. A missing front tooth. Just like Alara, General. Varkas barked, drawing his own sword. The Emperor is watching. If you won't kill the brats, I will. Varkas shoved past Kalen. He raised his blade, aiming for the girl in the white dress. He wanted to prove a point. He wanted the glory. Kalen's head snapped up. The sadness in his eyes vanished, replaced by a fire that was hotter than the burning village outside. He didn't reach for his sword. He didn't have time. As Varkas swung his blade down, Kalen caught the steel with his bare gauntlet hand. The metal bit into his palm. Blood dripping onto the white dress, but Kalen didn't flinch. He squeezed, the sound of the lieutenant's sword bending under his grip echoing through the room. Kalen stood up, snapping Varkas's sword in half. He punched the lieutenant in the chest, sending him flying back through the chapel doors. Kalen picked up Severance from the floor. He turned his back to the villagers. He turned his back to the girl. He faced the open door, where 50 of his own elite soldiers were waiting, confused and angry. General, the soldiers shouted. What are you doing? Kalen lowered his visor. The demon was back, but this time, he had a different target. New orders, Kalen roared, his voice shaking the stained glass windows. No one touches the girl. No one touches this chapel. He stepped over the threshold, drawing a line in the dirt with the tip of his sword. Anyone who tries, Kalen growled, dies by my hand. Varkas scrambled to his feet, blood pouring from his nose where Kalen had punched him. He spat a tooth onto the cobblestones and pointed his broken sword at his former commander. He has gone mad. Varkas screamed, his voice cracking with desperation. He is a traitor to the throne. Kill him. Kill the girl. The Emperor will give a lordship to the man who brings me his head. The 50 soldiers of the Iron Vanguard hesitated. They looked at Varkas, then they looked at Kalen. They knew the legend. They knew that engaging Kalen in a fair fight was a complicated form of suicide. Come on. Kalen roared, and the sound was so primal it made the horses rear up in panic. Come and meet your god. Fear of the general was great, but fear of the Emperor, and greed for the reward, was greater. 3 spearmen lunged forward, trying to use their reach to keep the giant blade at bay. It was a mistake. Kalen didn't parry. He stepped into the spears. The iron tip sparked against his breastplate, unable to pierce the heavy black steel. Before they could retract, Kalen swung Severance. The 6-foot blade hissed through the air. The impact was sickening. The 3 spears, and the men holding them, were shattered in a single horizontal arc. The bottleneck of the chapel door was Kalen's greatest ally. They couldn't surround him. They had to come at him 2 or 3 at a time. Feeding themselves into the meat grinder, for 10 minutes, it was absolute chaos. Kalen was a whirlwind of black steel. He fought with a cold, calculated efficiency, conserving his energy, making every movement a killing stroke. Bodies piled up at the threshold, creating a grim barricade that the remaining soldiers had to climb over, but Kalen was mortal. And he was 50 years old. A lucky mace strike caught him in the ribs, cracking the armor and the bone beneath. A dagger found the gap in his armpit. Blood began to slick the handle of his sword. His breathing became ragged, harsh gasps echoing inside his helm. He's tiring. Varkas yelled from the back, safe behind his men. Press him. Crush him. Kalen stumbled as a halberd hooked his leg. He fell to one knee, a cheer went up from the vanguard. They surged forward, sensing the kill. A sword struck Kaelin's helmet, shattering the visor. The metal shore away, revealing Kaelin's face, bruised, bleeding, sweat pouring down into his eyes. He looked up. He saw the wall of steel coming down to execute him. Then, he felt a small, light touch on his back. "Mr. Knight," a tiny voice whispered. Kaelin froze. Lily was standing right behind him. She hadn't run to the back of the chapel. She had stayed close to her protector. The thought of that blade touching her, of that white dress turning red, ignited a reserve of fuel in Kaelin's soul that he didn't know existed. It wasn't rage. It was love. A father's love, resurrected from the ashes of 20 years of hate, and Kaelin screamed. He didn't just stand up, he exploded upward. He shoulder-checked the soldier in front of him with enough force to cave in the man's chest. He swung Severance with one hand, grabbing a fallen soldier's shield with the other. He became a battering ram. He pushed the vanguard back, step by bloody step, out of the doorway and into the burning square. He cut down the halberdier. He crushed the swordsman. He was no longer fighting for the Emperor. He was fighting for Ilara. He was fighting for the second chance he didn't deserve. Finally, the soldiers broke. They threw down their weapons. They ran. They realized that you cannot kill a man who is already dead inside, especially when he has found a reason to live. Only Varkas remained. The lieutenant stood in the center of the square, holding a heavy war axe he had taken from a dead body. He was trembling. Kaelin walked toward him. He dragged Severance behind him, the tip carving a groove in the dirt. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds. He looked like a ruin of a man. "Stay back," Varkas whimpered. "I am the commander now." Kaelin didn't speak. He raised his sword. Varkas screamed and charged, swinging the axe in a desperate overhead smash. Kaelin didn't block. He sidestepped, a move of grace that belied his size. As the axe slammed harmlessly into the earth, Kaelin drove the pommel of his great sword into Varkas's temple. Varkas collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. Silence fell over the village. The crackling of the fires was the only sound. Kaelin stood there for a moment, swaying. The adrenaline was leaving him, and the pain was rushing in like a tide. He dropped his sword. He turned back to the chapel. The villagers were slowly coming out, their eyes wide with disbelief. They looked at the pile of bodies. They looked at the monster who had saved them. Lily ran out from the doorway. She didn't care about the blood. She didn't care about the scary armor. She ran straight to him and hugged his metal leg. Kaelin looked down. His vision was blurring. He sank to his knees, unable to stand any longer. "Did I?" Kaelin wheezed, blood bubbling on his lips. "Did I make the hurt go away?" Lily looked at his battered face. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the daisy. It was crushed, missing petals, but she tucked it into the gap of his broken armor, right over his heart. "Yes," she whispered. "You're a good giant." Kaelin closed his eyes. For the first time in 20 years, the screaming in his head stopped. The fire inside him cooled. He didn't know if the Emperor would send more legions tomorrow. He didn't know if he would survive the night. But as he felt the small arms of the girl around him and saw the villagers rushing forward with water and bandages instead of pitchforks, General Kaelin smiled. The extinction event was over. The Guardian had begun.